Every so often, I'll go on social media and I'll go into an art space, and there's a common debate always being had in the comment section. You'll see somebody going on a rant about how worthless realism art is. They'll tell you that it's boring, they'll tell you that it's soulless, they'll tell you that we have cameras, so what's the point? All somebody say with their chest that realism is the AI art of the art world. On the opposing side of that argument, you'll have people who are saying is the only legitimate form of art and that everything else is meaningless. It doesn't compare. And again, we're saying things that don't make sense. We should really stop doing that. That it can be boring. I think firstly, I'd like to talk about how I view realism in the little categories in which I kind of put certain realism work in. For me, there's realism, there's hyperrealism, and there's photorealism. Realism is what I consider realistic in one sense. And then there's components kind of pull it out of realism. So take, for example, James Gurney. He is a realist painter and his work is absolutely gorgeous. However, he's painting things realistically that don't exist. But it's realism. He's realistically painting things that do not exist. How can you tell me that's boring? This is another type of realism that I really enjoy looking at because it's unique. Then you've got hyperrealism, where you have to pay a lot of attention to the details to make it really look alive. You have to really make sure everything looks the way it's supposed to look. Some hyperrealist painters are Diego Coy, Alyssa Monk's. I really like Alyssa Monk's work because it's not just a straight up portrait. It's still very interesting to look at and to see how she created the steamy effect of a hot shower. I think that's really cool. And then finally, you have photorealism, which is very similar to hyperrealism, except you're using a reference and you're typically drawing the reference exactly. You're drawing from that exactly how you see it. And this is the one that I think people really do not like. Chuck Close is a really good example of this. His work is very realistic, but it's a one-to-one image of whatever reference he used. Beautiful work, and it's amazing to admire from a technical perspective. You can really admire his technical ability, but there's nothing more than that, in my opinion. A lot of the time with those pieces, it is just kind of a, hey, look what I can do. Look at how aesthetically pleasing this piece is. And that's fine, right? You're allowed to do that. You can do that, absolutely. It's not going to be everybody's taste, and that's fine. I don't think any of our pieces is going to be for everybody. But I do see when people say that it's boring, those pieces to me are boring. I think it's important to look at different artists. I'm always on the hunt to find new artists, new realism painters, new realist painters. Because with art, you can quite literally do anything you want to do. You can do anything, even with realism. Like I said, there is a man walking this earth right now they're painting things. He's painting things that do not exist, and he paints them as if he walks the earth with them. And I'm going to talk about the work that I do. So this is the painting that I did back in 2024. And at the time, I thought it was alright. I was never fully happy with it, but for what it was, I thought that I did a pretty decent job on it. After I gave it a few months, and I just wasn't impressed with it. Looking at it now, I don't even like it. And to me, it's boring. It's a boring piece. What does the viewer take from it? It's not special to me. And I'm not getting down on myself before anybody says anything. I'm not doing that. I think critique is important, but to me, I know it's subjective. To me, it's a very boring piece. If someone were saying that realism is boring, my mind would also go to that piece. It's boring. There's nothing you can really take from it. And as I've started to play more with composition and play more with adding abstraction into my pieces, I found that I enjoy playing with different colors in the skin, because realistically, right, our skin is made up of different colors because of things like our undertones and the blood running through our veins. Our skin is somewhat translucent, right? So you can see different colors. You look at your arm, you can see the color of your veins and things like that. But I exaggerate some of the colors like I did in this piece. This piece was very fun, just playing with a bunch of colors. Now, granted, you could still say there's not much you could take from this piece, but I think you may stop a little bit longer to look at all of the colors that I'm using. I hope. The piece that I'm working on right now, the piece that you're watching me paint, this one is one of my favorites because of the abstraction that I added into it. What inspired the piece was gender dysphoria. I made several different intentional choices when painting this that hopefully gets the viewer to think a bit deeper. It's not about aesthetics. There was genuine thought put into this piece. There's not a photo out there of me that looks like that. So it's not a one-to-one image. There's literal holes in my face. It's and they're there for a reason. That is up for you to interpret. I know why I put them there. The goal is for you to think about why I did that. What could that mean, right? Art gets more interesting when you are forced to think about it. It's not just about, oh, it's pretty. It's more than that. Sometimes it is just, I want to do this little study. I want this to look pretty. I want it to look pretty. That's fine, but not all of them are like that. And that approach can very well be why it's boring, right? We're not taking the time to stop and think about what we're actually looking at, why an artist made the decisions that they made, because it's typically a reason as to why someone is making those decisions. If you follow me and you've been looking at the shorts that I post, I'm painting this piece of myself as a playing card. And again, there is not a picture of me that looks like this. I created the composition and then I went from there. There's still things, honestly, that as I get closer to finishing, I'm gonna have to sit back down and plan out more. But so far, the things that I have done to this piece have been intentional. The Roman numeral, the spade, the fact that they're in black and not in red is for a reason. The fact that one of the figures is red and one of the figures is in grayscale is for a reason. And to me, this is interesting to look at. I like looking at this. It's a self-portrait of me, and I do exist. But the fact that it's still realism, right? But there are several painters out there who I love their works because it's always going to be something different. There's other painters who I really respect their technical ability. But I think that their compositions have gotten a bit boring. So I don't really consume their art as much. Yeah, but I don't think that realism is boring. I love realism. My favorite is when people pair some form of abstraction with realism. I think that's going to do it every time. The main three things to me is that there's different types of realistic art. There's different types of realism. Realism can be paired with different things such as abstraction, and then realism isn't always just creating a one-to-one image of your reference photo. Very many artists have to plan out their composition. They're creating their composition. I want to say this as well. People will say that realism is boring and that it's just a one-to-one image of a reference photo, and that they don't like that. That's why they don't like realism. But when you go outside the box and you are doing things that are in fact different and you are experimenting with your work, it's crickets, ain't nobody there to be found. Y'all don't think that's strange? I think that reading through everyone's perspectives are interesting. when it comes to realism, because sometimes I can see where they're coming from on both sides for sure. But other times I think that on both sides they're getting to a bit of an extreme and they're saying things that just simply are not true. I think it's an interesting discussion to have, and I think we should have more discussions about art. We've reached the end of the video, and I have to do the typical YouTuber thing where I ask you guys to please comment, like, and subscribe. If you did make it to the end, thank you so much for watching. Please let me know what you guys think, what your opinions are on realism, if you like it, if you hate it, and why. I'd love to see what you guys have to say, and if you have any recommendations for realism artists, I'd love to see that as well. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.